I've been talking with an accent for the past 10, 11, almost 15 years of my life. In high school, I had a friend who was from the UK, a foreign exchange student. And by the end of the school year, I sounded like her, the accent. And it stuck with me till now. I thought it was just me trying to have like a different accent to sound different from the American accent, which is partially true. But turns out my ADHD brain was doing exactly what ADHD brain does. Sometimes I could be mid-sentence talking completely normally and then out of nowhere I sound bish. Not on purpose, just it happens, and it's been happening for over a decade. And for the longest time, I didn't really have an explanation for it beyond I had a friend from the UK, high school, started watching a lot of soap operas like British shows and stuff like that, and it just kind of stuck. But I started going deeper into ADHD and just trying to find out more about myself. And there's actually a real documented science behind why our brain does this, why the voices shift, why we pick up accents, why our tone fluctuates, why sometimes we talk mile a minute, then the other times we trail off because before we can even finish the sentence. So today we're going to get into the ADHD voice, what is actually happening, why it does what it does, and why none of it means you're being fake or inconsistent or weird. And science actually backs us up. There's been researchers who can actually identify ADHD just from listening how someone talks. Not what they say, but how they say it, the rhythm of it, the pitch, the pace, the melody of the words that come out. There's a study that was done last year, 2025, peer-reviewed, published in scientific reports, analyzed speech samples from hundreds of adults with ADHD alongside people without it, and based purely on how a voice patterns, they were able to tell who had ADHD and who didn't with a pretty solid accuracy, right? So the way ADHD brain works or talks is measurably different. Not wrong, not bad, just different. And it makes sense when you think about it, right? Because what ADHD actually affects is not just focus, it's the whole regulation system. And that same regulation system controls how we physically produce speech, the pace, the volume, the flow of it. And when the system is running differently, the voice reflects it. Yeah, I guess we're copycatters in a way. I don't know. Now, we have something called the accent mirroring thing, right? And what that basically means is that you unconsciously start sounding like whoever you're around. You pick up their rhythm, their accent, their intonations. Most people do this a little, but with the ADHD brain, we do it a lot more and a lot faster. And the reason why is that the ADHD brain is very sensitive to auditory input, right? So meaning it picks up on sounds and patterns more intensely than most. It also has harder time filtering out the impulse to imitate what it's picking up. You hear an accent, your brain goes, "Oh, this is interesting." Instead of just registering it and moving the way that most brains do, your brain grabs it, holds on to it, and we start using it. Isn't that lovely? And then we have that novelty piece to it, right? ADHD brains are constantly looking for something new and interesting, a new accent, a new way of sounding. It genuinely stimulates our mind, our brain. It is different, it is engaging, and the brain rewards that engagement by making it stick. And that's literally what happened with me. My brain found something new, found it interesting, held on to it, and decades later, here we are. So my British accent or my European accent, whichever country it's from high school, I had a friend who was a foreign exchange student from the UK, and I naturally just started picking up the way I was speaking, not as a joke or to impress anyone. I was genuinely drawn to how it sounded different from everything else I was hearing. The American accent, duh. And then I started watching a lot of BBC shows, British soap operas specifically, and the more I was around the sound, the more it settled in my own speech. And some point I stopped being imitation. It just became a part of who I speak. Now, depending on what part of town I am, some days I'm speaking to you normally like this. The other days I have my accent, especially on social media. It's just now recently, oh my goodness gracious, that I'm actually speaking a lot more American accent compared to just my European accent or British accent. So, but let me clear something out. What I did was a conscious, extended version of something ADHD brain does all the time unconsciously. I chose to lean into that exposure, but the reason why it stuck, the reason why my brain latched onto it so hard and held onto it is that part is very, very ADHD. The novelty, the stimulation of a new sound, the dopamine reward of engaging with something different. And here's the research actually says about the ADHD brain heavily weighs environmental stimuli as a way of seeking stimulation, meaning the environment around me is not just a background noise to our brain. It is an input that our brain is actively processing and sometimes observing in ways you don't even notice. Another thing that research brings is that when your voice shifts a lot, when you talk differently depending on who you're around, when you are not always sure what accent is going to come out, it can start to feel like a strange thing. Like, is this really me? Am I being fake? Which version of my is real? And I've really had that multiple times. And that feeling has a name. It's called imposter syndrome, right? The sense of not being sure if you're being genuine, which is already really common with people like us with ADHD, right? So I want to say it directly. The mirroring is not fakeness. It's not performative. It is your brain responding to its environment the way ADHD brain do, intensely, quickly, and with less of a filter between what it takes in and what it produces. Now, this accent of mine, or whatever accent that you're mirroring, that part of it, how I talk for over a decade, right? It came from a real person. It came from a real exposure. It developed naturally. The fact that it started with imitation doesn't make it fake. It's just how it got there. Now, beyond the accent mirroring, ADHD shows up in a few other ways specific when it comes to how we talk. The pitch thing, right? A lot of people with ADHD pitch changes for the most, getting higher when excited, dropping when disengaged. That is the emotional regulation piece doing its thing in a real time through your voice. The pace thing, right? A lot of people who are hyper focused or excited, words come out faster, real fast, sometimes faster than the other person can actually follow, and faster than what our tongues can actually output. And then when the energy drops, mid-sentence trails off, sentences start to trail off, the brain moved on before the mouth finished. That happens because the thought that was driving the sentence left before the sentence entered. Then we have a volume thing, talking loudly when the brain is stimulated, dropping almost to a whisper when it's not for any social reason, just the regulation system doing what it does. And all of this is just our ADHD showing up in how I sound, in not a way that needs to be fixed necessarily, just a way that makes sense once you understand what is driving it. The bottom line is that the way our voice sounds, the shift, the fluctuation, the mirroring people around us, that is our brain doing what it does, picking up auditory input intensely, seeking stimulation and novelty, reflecting its regulation state in real time through pitch, pace, and pattern. And it's not us being fake, it's not consistency in a bad way, it's just ADHD in our voice. And mine has been pretty bitch for a decade. I really, 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 really I feel like I love the southern accent, or even the Italian or French, but those one didn't, I guess, stimulate me enough to really be like, oh, let me hone into it. And honestly, I'm okay with it. It's okay, right? So if this episode explains something that you have been experiencing for a long time, drop it in the comment. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, Just With Faith. And come back, because we're gonna have these conversations, the deep dives just on faith. Until next time, bye. Yeah.